This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here in the studio live this week. You can join us over on Facebook Live, which is right here next to me. I can see all the questions being asked. You can also just go over to killerinnovations.com/live, and you have a variety of options. We actually video stream. The native video stream from the studio is on Zoom, so you can actually see everything going on in the studio if you hop on over to Zoom. Otherwise, you can ask your questions over on Facebook Live. So in the last couple of weeks, actually probably the last month or so here on the show, we have been taking questions from the audience. It seems we've just gotten a big rash of them. And we did Chris a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was. And this time we have a question from a different listener. It's actually a very good question, and one that I've had a number of people in the last couple of weeks either reaching out to me or wanting to get some feedback on their own struggles. So just to kind of kick it off, I'm going to read the email as it came in from Jim in this case. I'm using Jim as his name because I don't want to out him with his boss from that standpoint. So it says, Phil, I've been listening to your podcast since moving into a new challenging position at my company. As many people talk about, my new position is an attempt for my, quote, big company to try to start an innovation engine amidst the changing economic landscape. The first challenge I am facing is that the branch I work in is a manufacturing arm of my company and has not had any exposure to the development of products that we manufacture. The second challenge is that top management has not given any direction in where to look for new opportunities. That can be amazing and daunting at the same time. In my desire to establish some type of order, my research has come across the fuzzy front end of innovation. I believe this is where I need to start and get going. My thought is that this would be where there are a lot of trials and errors, but would hopefully come out would be a concept that could be that has some defined goals and functions that could then be put into an NPD process, new product development process. I like the FFE, or the fuzzy front end, to be a little less structured than the NPD, new product development process, to allow for creativity. My questions are, does it make sense to manage the fuzzy front end differently than the new product development process? And the second question, is there a handoff model that you could recommend between the fuzzy front end and the new process development? I appreciate your time and love your podcast, Jim. So, hey, Jim, thanks a lot for the question. We are going to dedicate, there's a lot packed into that email. So we're gonna answer that, but it's gonna take the entire show. So sit back, and we're gonna tackle this whole concept of what is this fuzzy front end of innovation. So first off, let's define what we mean by the fuzzy front end. Some people call it phase zero. It's even before you even start any kind of an effort. It's very chaotic. It's confusing. You've got lots of ideas running around. You're not quite sure where to even start. In fact, if you're like a lot of innovators, you've got this notebook. You've written down all the items in the notebook, but you don't even know where to start. You don't know which one to work on. You don't even know how to get started with it. In the addition here, Jim mentioned specifically that management has asked him to take on this new innovation role in the manufacturing arm of a large company, but is given no guidance. The challenge with the fuzzy front end is as you're trying to build up a new team, a new organization, you're going to run into the challenge of management patience. And let's face it, management has no patience. It is the inherent problem. There's a rule that I've written about over on the blog called the Rule of 18, and I'll try to remind myself to write myself a note here, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. The Rule of 18 is basically, after 10 years of running an innovation team at Hewlett Packard, great company, but like all large organizations, you've got to feed the engine. And so there was always this, unwritten rule of the rule of 18 about how much time could you really spend on a new concept before you actually had to show something for it. It turns out to be roughly about 18 months. And when I published the rule of 18, it actually got picked up, and a lot of other people who are running innovation organizations inside of large corporations actually responded back that they had the exact same problem with this rule of 18. So management has a lack of patience, and it's just not helpful when you're in this confusing state and they're all looking over the top of you saying, okay, what's next? When is it going to happen? What's this new idea? Now, to start it right off, with Jim's question, does it make sense to manage the fuzzy front end differently than the NPD or the new product development process? And the answer is absolutely yes. You have to run those differently. An NPD process is pretty well defined. You've got to define product that you're going to build, and now you're going to go through and actually deliver that product. So from that standpoint, it is a completely different process. And in fact, in this case of the fuzzy front end, there's actually a fairly famous diagram. If you go out onto Google and you type in fuzzy front end innovation, and you look in the graphics, you'll see this kind of funny graphic. It starts off on the left, and it's got a bunch of squiggly lines, and the lines get a little bit less squiggly, and then it flattens out. And it's basically trying to denote what this fuzzy front end is. You're thrashing, you're looking, you're not quite sure what, where, how to even get started. And it's even worse than writer's block. Writer's block, when you're writing a book or you're writing a blog post or you're writing an article for a magazine, you're sitting down, you get the blank sheet of paper, and you're looking for the ideas. In the fuzzy front end, you've got lots of ideas. And how do you go about dealing with it? Now, I'm going to address kind of a secondary question that Jim asked in his email, and this was around the fact of lack of direction for management. Now, and I'm going to get into this in a little more detail as we look at some of the other segments, or into the other suggestions that I have. But here's the way I deal with management when it comes to innovation, or at least how I dealt with it at HP and other companies where I ran the innovation programs. And that is, first out of the gate, keep quiet. Don't tell management everything you're working on. Don't talk about a project until you have confidence that it's going to eventually make it. You may not know the timeline, but all of a sudden you kind of get over this tipping point and you get really excited about it. Don't oversell it. Don't sell it too soon. Because as soon as you tell management about an idea you're working on, you start the rule of 18 clock. And you want to get as much time on that rule of 18 clock running in your favor. So don't talk about it. And believe me, this is the hardest thing I have even today as a CEO, telling the engineers not to tell me something, right? They all get excited. They want to tell me. In some cases, they shouldn't be telling me, and they definitely shouldn't be talking about it outside, no matter how excited they are with it. So keep it quiet until you get that confidence, and then you want to reveal it. So what do you do instead? The key with management is expectation management. Get agreement from the management team on what the final deliverables are, such as, you're going to have X prototypes done per year. In the case of the Innovation Program Office at Hewlett-Packard, the metric that I had was 2 worldwide product launches every year. 2. In fact, we averaged 3 to 4 over the 5 years that I ran we started it and until I retired out. The key there is you set the end metric and then you keep management focused on that goal and metric, not on the how. How are you doing? How's the progress going? Give me a status update on every project. No. I told you I signed up. I'll deliver you 2 worldwide products a year. Other than that, go away. Leave us alone. Otherwise, you're reacting constantly with the never endings of why is that not working? Why not? Why is that idea not going to turn into an innovation? Why not? And you don't want to be doing that. So in the fuzzy front end, particularly inside of a large organization, as Jim is dealing with it right now, is get management out of the way, set the end goal, define what success means for you and for your team, and then report out to that status. So we're going to take another quick break here. We'll be right back and we'll continue on. I've got 3 steps on how to get through the fuzzy front end and be successful with your innovation projects. So don't go anywhere. We'll come right back and we'll kick it off with step 1. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We're talking this week about the fuzzy front end of innovation. In the first segment, I read the email from Jim talking about him being put into a new role. You know, Jim, I don't know whether to congratulate you on your new role or send you condolences. The innovation game is really hard. You're going to be very frustrated. The frustration never goes away. It's not like you've solved all the problems and now everything is smooth gliding. You know, I had billion-dollar product successes and new products developed. It's never enough. You know, the next question they ask you is, okay, that was yesterday. What are you going to do for me for tomorrow's products? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through 3 steps to get through this fuzzy front end of, you know, the very early stage 0 of the funnel where you've just got kind of these raw basic ideas. Well, the first thing is you better have a funnel. You need to establish the funnel. Now, when I talk about a funnel, I'm talking about, think about it as the wide end of the funnel that has lots of ideas, and it gets down to be very narrow at the other end, which is the finished ideas that turn into products. In my case, I don't get into a really complex funnel. I like a 4-stage funnel. That way it's not overly burdensome. It's not like a project management step, but it does give you this feel of understanding you're dealing with really raw ideas and then getting it down into a pretty fine list. Now, the question is where you start. People like to start at the big end of the funnel, stuff it all up. And that's actually where the confusion and the uncertainty and kind of the anxiety occurs. Don't start there. I'm going to give you a little trick. Start at the other end. And what you do then is you say, how many of those things do I want to have come out at the other end? In the case at Hewlett-Packard, the Innovation Program Office had to deliver 2 fundamentally new worldwide products every year. 2. All right? Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a big deal. 2 worldwide products in a year. So now, knowing that I have to deliver 2 a year, I can actually back through and construct the funnel. Now, in a typical innovation game, if you are kind of in the top 20% of all innovation teams around the world, you'll have about a 50% kill rate in each phase of a 4-stage funnel. So in this case, the 4 stages that I use, starting at the big fat end of the funnel, is the market validation phase. So that's, does the problem really exist? I have this crazy idea, but how do I go make sure the problem really exists? Second is the customer validation. I've now refined it, and I've actually got kind of an idea in my head about what a product or a service or a capability would be. And I'm going to go pitch that to customers and see what the reaction is. The third is limited launch. I may build it and just give it to a customer as a prototype. I may do it with a small segment of customers. I may do it in a region or a country before I blow it out really big. And then the 4th phase is the full launch. So in this case, if I start at the far end, full launched product, and I say that I'm going to do 2 per year, and I have roughly about a 50% kill rate. And this is actually I'm going to share with you my funnel that I had at HP. And in fact, I'm going to give it away to you as a free PDF. So if you go over to killerinnovations.com/funnel, I'll give you the actual funnel I used at HP, and I'll also give you a stage gate program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that is, once you're at that end of that funnel and you're getting ready to launch the product, how do you manage the gates through the typical product development process? So you're going to get both the innovation funnel and the product development stage gates. So, and these are ones I've actually used. The funnel's what I used at HP. The stage gate is what I've used pretty much over my entire career. Again, just go to killerinnovations.com/funnel, killerinnovations.com/funnel, and you can download that PDF. So the actual funnel I used at HP was these 4 stages. So market validation, customer validation, limited launch, or sometimes I refer to that as lighthouse. If you heard me give talks or speeches or been to any of my boot camp workshops or etc., you'll hear me also use the word lighthouse, which is a single customer. You're all focused on that one customer to make them successful as the first user of something. And then you got the product launch. So starting at the product launch, objective 2 per year. How many do you need to have in each phase of that funnel? If you want to do 2, then in the case of a limited launch, I would have between 4 and 5. Most likely I'd keep 5 in that funnel because you'll find that things stay in there longer than you anticipate. Because these are you're going to iterate. You're going to put it out at a customer site. You're going to bring it back. You're going to modify it. So 2 in product launch, 5 in limited launch. I would then have 10 in customer validation, and I would have 20 in market validation. So starting with 20 in market validation, I get down to 2 in the actual product launch. So now it doesn't look so daunting because now you have to think about 20 market validations, ideas that have gone through some form of a ranking process. We're going to talk about that here in the next step, but you're going to have to come up with 20 good, solid ideas. Now, in the case of HP, now keep in mind that's 20 to 2, right? So that's 10%. Right? 90% failure rate, 10% success rate. Believe me, if you can achieve this number, you are in the top 10% of the innovation game. If you can go from having 20 starter ideas and get down to 2 launches and consistently launch 2 a year, you're in the top 10% of all innovation teams out there in the marketplace that I have seen. Now to back it up, what fed the 20? We would have 200, 300 ideas that we would go through the process of either brainstorming or submissions from customers or submission from teams inside. And we'd actually go through and we'd ask the 5 questions. If you don't know what the 5 questions are, go search for it on the Killer Innovation site. There's been podcasts on this, or you can go over to the blog over at Phil McKinney. I've written about this. My entire book is on this. So the 5 magic questions you ask got me down to the 20, and then you're working through the process of the 20, 10, 5, and down to 2. So step 1, you need to establish the funnel. Don't start at the big end. Start at the target end, back into the numbers. It doesn't feel so daunting. You're just talking about 20 good ideas to work it through the process to ultimately deliver. Now, the key is going to be how do you fill the funnel? And that's actually the next step, step 2. And we're going to pick that up right after this quick commercial break. And as we head out to the commercial break, don't forget, hop over to killerinnovations.com/funnel. You can download the PDF and also get connected on all the past shows that we have out there. We are now in season 12, getting ready for season 13. So stay right there. We'll pick up with step 2 when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio. This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We're picking up in segment 3 here. Step number 2, to deal with the fuzzy front end. Number 1 was establish your funnel. And define your funnel. With the little trick that I gave you in the last segment, it is not that intimidating. You're not talking about dealing with just this morass of ideas. You get it down to a manageable number pretty quickly. And believe me, if you can deliver against the same funnel that I shared with you, and again, you can download the funnel I'm giving you, the funnel. It's not very sophisticated. It's only a 3-page PDF document. One page of it's the funnel. The second page is a product development stage gate example. But if you go over and download that over at killerinnovations.com/funnel, then you can take a look at that. But if you can hit the numbers that are in that funnel, you're top 10%. The funnel is really the key. So step number 1 is create the funnel. Step number 2 is fill the funnel. How do you fill it? How do you keep the whole idea sourcing coming in? So how do you fill a funnel? Now, you've been listening to this show for quite some time, I'm assuming. Well, some of you may particularly be a new listener. If you're a new listener, you need to go back into the archive. There's 12 years of shows. There's a number of shows that are around what we call FIRE, or Focus, Ideation, Ranking, and Execution. It's a 4-phase framework that every innovation process should have. So you can go back through the archive, just search for FIRE, and you'll find a whole bunch of shows that explains it in more detail. In the case of filling the funnel, you want to do the focus, ideation, and ranking. Focus defines where do you do the search. Do you focus on the customer, the who? Do you focus on a new kind of a product, a what? Do you focus on the how, which is everything behind the scenes? And to be quite honest, Jim, given that you are the manufacturing arm of a big company, you may want to focus on a how. What can you innovate, for instance, in creating more efficiency in manufacturing, reducing material costs, material wastage, speed up the time it takes to actually produce a product, all kinds of things. So you may want to start there because that's what that team knows, and they'll be comfortable with it. Then kind of branch out into other areas, kind of get an early win. But first off, you got to define the focus. It can't be let's run around and come up with new ideas. That always will produce a very weak, poor output. You need to be focused. What is it you're going to work on? So in this case, Jim, if I was sitting with you one-on-one and I was your coach, your innovation coach, the advice that I would give you right now is I would start off focusing in a how area. How being, how does the business operate? All of the back office stuff, the stuff behind the scenes that nobody sees, whether it be procurement and material production and manufacturing, logistics, shipping, trucking, all those areas. It's an area where that team probably knows a lot about it, and many of those people already have ideas on how to be more efficient in making the product and how to reduce wastage and all those kinds of things. So define the focus. Next is the ideation. So go out there and ideate. Go off. There's 2 podcast on how to run a next generation brainstorming session. So just go to killinnovations.com, look for the search button, and look for next generation brainstorming, or just say brainstorming. It'll come up. And there's also a PDF document on that one, which will tell you the actual steps on how to run what I call a next generation brainstorming session. So you come up with the ideation. And then the next is the ranking, the 5 magic questions we talk about. Ask the 5 questions. It'll allow you to then create a ranked list of all of the ideas that you've come up with. And that ranked list then will tell you which ones to work on first, which one to work on second, which one to work on third. Now, once you have that ranked list, that feeds into the funnel. You take maybe the top 2 or 3, start putting them into the early stages of the funnel, and now you're off to the races. It helps actually filter it out. Now it is pretty chaotic because you may get the top 2-3 ideas, then when you start working on them, oh, they're not going to work too well. So you boot them out, maybe take the next 2 or 3. At the same time, you've got to continuously do this. You've got to continuously define focus areas, go off and ideate, rank those ideas, and go through the early stage process of proving that out. This is still messy. It's all about testing, experimenting, and just as importantly, killing them. Killing ideas that just are not going to work. Now, it won't feel like you're making much progress because you're spending, particularly if you don't have a funnel or your funnel is empty, you're thrashing at the early end to try to get your funnel full. The key here is keep at it, perseverance. I jokingly say I've got this nice callus right here on my forehead because I just, constantly banging my head over my entire career, right? The innovation game is frustrating. If you're looking for a career where it's just kind of an easy ride, you don't have to worry about anything, get out of the innovation game. You will be frustrated. I will guarantee it, you will be frustrated. And you got to be willing to stick with it. Look at Thomas Edison. How many different experiments did he run before he found the right filament for the light bulb? I don't know, it was like 2,000 experiments, right? And he always got asked about the failures, and he goes, no, they weren't failures. They just told me what did not work. But they were not failures. So you got to get frustrated. Now, the challenge with filling the funnel also is that you have to understand at what rate do you need to keep generating new ideas. Because if you're going to produce 2 products out the other end and you have a 50% kill rate across every phase, you can run that number pretty easily. Now that kind of assumes, the pretty simple model assumes that you can come up with an idea and within a year produce a product. Now, some industries you can do that. Take a laptop, for instance. A laptop can take anywhere between 9 months and a year to go from concept to ultimately, putting that product up on the shelf. However, bigger, more complex kinds of products could be 2-3 years. So in this case, you've got to fill the funnel, manage the funnel, and get it through that entire process and know how many ideas you got to generate in, at what age each of those ideas are, knowing that the 2 products at the other end are 2 years from now. And so therefore, how many ideas do you need to have come in? How much are you killing off every year to keep a healthy funnel? So in this case, figure out how fast you have to fill the funnel is determined by what is the average length of time to go from idea to shipping a product in your industry or in your company. Now this may be actually, now that I'm thinking about this and I've said it, this may be actually an area for innovation. If your industry average is 2 years, challenge yourself. What would it take to do it in 1 year, right? Where I'm at now as the CEO, the industry for each generation of this particular technology was 4 years. And we challenged ourselves and we did it in 2.5 years. And that became part of the innovations that we created, was in the process of how we actually sped up the innovation process. So, but knowing what that time frame is then kind of also helps feed into how fast or how many ideas do you need to have coming into the funnel and how do you capture those. Now, a little kind of inside baseball here a little bit. So when I started at HP and I built the innovation program office, when I started there was nobody. The total staff of 0 was in the IPO. I had my CTO role, but there was no innovation program office. So I had to staff it up and get the funnel running, get the funnel full, and then generate 2 products a year. So what I got management to do, and Jim, this is really the hint for you, is I asked for 2 years of no deliverables. Don't expect to hear from me. 2 years is what's going to take to get kind of the flywheel going in order to keep the funnel and get the funnel full and get the funnel processing. In my current role as the CEO, when I came in and was being recruited for the CEO, I got the same thing, but actually it became 3 years because of some other activities that had to be done. So when you're filling the funnel and you're building a new funnel, you're going to need some breathing room in order to get the funnel started. So don't be afraid to ask for that. So stay right there. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to pick up in step number 3 on how do you get around this fuzzy front end. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network.
Biz Talk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are talking this week around the fuzzy front end of innovation. Now, for some of you, you probably have all experienced the fuzzy front end. You just didn't know that it had a formal name. And yes, you can actually go on to your browser, search for fuzzy front end. There's Wikipedia articles around the fuzzy front end of innovation. And there's a whole series of people who've written articles and universities that have done research on this. So this is kind of that messy, very, very early part of the process where it's just very chaotic. No really clear path to go from that idea to turning it into a product. You're not even sure if you're working on the right ideas. It's chaotic. It's stressful. It's frustrating. So we've been talking about the 3 steps on how do you deal with this fuzzy front end and how do you organize it and get your arms around it. So step 1 was establish your funnel. And start, again, as the hint I gave you, start at the far end. So if your objective is to launch 2 products a year, then back it up and define what you need in each stage of your funnel. Once you have that, step 2, fill the funnel. So go through your focus, ideation, and ranking, keep it full, and understand at what rate do you need to generate ideas that ultimately allow you to deliver the 2 per year. So what is step 3? Step 3 is managing the funnel. This isn't a blind thing where you just throw things into one end and magic comes out the other end. You have to manage the funnel. So one is you have to move things forward. It's easy to get things started in the funnel. It's hard to push them through the process. I'm a big believer in a stage gate process. So stage gating is you define these phasings. And I don't do very narrow phasings. I do pretty broad phasings. But in order for an idea to move to the next phase, there's a certain set of questions that I want to have answered. Is the problem exist? Have we validated that the problem definition, the problem statement, is a valid problem statement in the minds of the market, and et cetera? And there's a whole series of these that you want to define so that as you move ideas forward. In my case, when we're doing projects, when I've done projects my entire career, I give a little bit of money for the first phase. And when it comes back for the stage gate, if it's proved itself out, then the second phase, they get more money. In the third phase, they get even more money. In the final phase, they get the whole ball of wax. It allows you to reduce the risk, fund it yet to get the experimentation and understanding without risking, a big chunk of the dollars all on ideas that just never pan out. So you want to use that process. So the one way to move things forward in the funnel, when managing the funnel, is set time limits. Don't let a product or an idea just kind of wallow around in its phase and never move forward. Get it to the point where you can ask it and understand whether or not this should go forward or what you should do with it. But at the same time, and I'm going to ask you to be a little schizophrenic here, at the same time, you got to be patient. Innovation's hard. It'll always take longer than you anticipate. And so from that standpoint, you got to be patient. You just can't be in your team's face. Or if you're the team and your boss is in your face, maybe you buy the 7 Laws of Innovation poster, right? So law number 4, the law of patience. Innovation takes more time than expected. Get used to it. So you can buy the poster, mail it to your boss. In fact, I'll remove your name from it so he doesn't even know it came from you. So again, move things forward. Give things time limits, but also at the same time be patient. So you kind of have to use your gut a little bit. Second is be willing to pause an idea. The difference between a good idea and a great idea, in many cases, is not the idea. It's the timing. Is the timing right? So how do you keep it warm? How do you park it? When do you review it? When do you restart it? And also the resources, the team that was working on it, if you pause it, they're going to get dispersed to work on other ideas. If all of a sudden this old idea starts to heat up, how do you bring them back together to work on it? One of the best ways I've done so far, and even this, I'm still working on trying to get this to be a much more easier process to kind of take an idea, put it on the shelf, wait, take it off the shelf, and then pick it up and run with it. But using Slack and using what's called setting up a channel in Slack around an idea that's paused so that the team can stay communicating. They can still stay in the loop. They can still be thinking of things that to do to work and enhance the product without active resourcing. So find a way for the team to stay virtually connected around the idea, even when you say, time out, we're going to pause this, the market's not ready, we'll come back to it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, but we're putting it on the shelf. The third activity of managing the funnel is killing an idea. This is the hardest thing you will ever do, bar none, short of firing somebody, which is extremely stressful and hard to do. And I still hate having to get through the process of letting people go. But killing a product or killing an idea like this is decimating to the team. So you have to think about killing it as opportunity cost. If you don't kill it, you're sucking up resources that can be used on the other ideas. And you need to be deliberate, and you just got to make the tough calls. So again, let's back up and talk through the steps again. Step 1, establish the funnel. Step 2, fill the funnel. Step 3, manage the funnel. So go over to killerinnovations.com/funnel, and that will get you download to a PDF that contains a graphic of the funnel that I actually used at HP. It also gives you a graphic of a stage gate model for a more traditional product development activity. It gives you a little bit more information about stage gating. So we're going to wrap up the show here. If you have a question that you'd like answered, just drop it to me in an email, phil@killerinnovations.com. You never know, your question might get chosen. And if so, you get a free copy of the book. I'll autograph it, and I'll send it to wherever you're at. So go ahead and do that. We're beginning plans for season 13. For long-time listeners, we did a special show for show 100, which was back in season 2. We haven't done anything, but we're coming up with some ideas. I'm thinking the prize would be to actually give you one show. So if you'd like to come on to Kill Innovations, be broadcast on 35 stations to promote your company or talk about your idea or have me coach and mentor you live on the radio, that's what we're thinking about for the prize. So let me know what you think about that. We'll have more information. That's kind of the big thing we're talking about here today on the new announcement. With that, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining me each and every week. We'll talk to you real soon, and keep on innovating, and don't let the innovation antibodies get you down. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. Biz Talk Radio.
Autism. 1 out of every 68 children in America are impacted across every race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic group. If you aren't directly affected, someone you know is. Today's world doesn't support those on the autism spectrum. It needs hacking for us to truly welcome those who think and create differently than ourselves. We're Hacking Autism, a nonprofit charity with a mission to hack therapy, technologies, and career opportunities that improve the personal and professional lives of people on the autism spectrum. We believe that everyone can play a role in supporting those on the autism spectrum so that they can show their unique talents and abilities in this fast-paced world. You aren't powerless in this fight. Use your gifts and talents to make a positive impact. Join us in making a difference. Go to hackingautism.org to learn more.
Carpenters have their hammers and saws, chefs have their outfitted kitchens, and musicians have their instruments. A craftsman's ability to do their job is dependent on having the right tools. So where does an innovator, someone who takes an idea and makes it real, find the right tools to do their job? Outfit your innovator's garage by visiting innovation.tools. Innovation.tools is an online store created by innovators for innovators. It's where you will find tested and proven tools to help you create that next great product or service. These tools include books, audio training, video training, brainstorming how-tos, and much, much more. And for a limited time, listeners of Killer Innovations will get 25% off on your first order by using the discount code RADIO at checkout. And 100% of our profits from your purchases will be donated to charity. So go to innovation.tools and create that next great innovation.
Rwanda is a shining example of how the global community can come together and rebuild a country after a devastating genocide. But there is still more that needs to be done. In the rural villages, students are crowded into schools with no electricity, no running water, no internet access, and limited sanitation. Will these kids be ready to continue the rebuilding of Rwanda, or will they be dependent upon others? Through education and employment, boys and girls have an equally promising future that can transform their struggling communities. For $20 a month, a child can be educated and a community strengthened. By supporting Pioneer Education Africa, a 501c3 charity, you partner with others to provide education that will prepare a generation to take on the task of self-reliance. 100% of the proceeds received go directly to the education of the children. Visit pioneereducationafrica.com to find out more.